Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on The Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. October 24th is Election Day in municipalities across Ontario, and we've had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing several different candidates for both council and mayor in Mississauga and Brampton over the course of the last couple of weeks. And I want to introduce you tonight to the current councillor in Ward 6, who's running for his fourth term. He's been there for 3 terms, and he's now running for his fourth term in Ward 6, Ron Starr. Councillor Ron Starr. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Brian.
How has it been on council for the last 3 terms?
Well, there are always ups and downs with council, and you're dealing with different personalities, you're dealing with problems, you're dealing with the public. So I think you have to be a person that has a flexible approach to things. Yep. And you have to listen. To me, my grandfather told me that the Lord made our ears and our mouth in a certain proportion. And he always says, Ronnie, use them that way. So.
I had a great, I was doing a speech once, Ron, where I said, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we would listen twice as much as we would speak. And the guy came up to me afterwards and said, you're completely wrong. God gave you ears that are always open and a mouth that can actually shut up and close. And I thought that was actually, that's even better.
Yeah, I have to remember that one.
And also, and then he went on and said, and actually, not part of the joke, but think about it, your ears are 360. Your mouth can only go one direction. And so, you speak only one person, but you can listen to what's going on all around.
That's right.
And I thought that was
interesting.
It is
interesting.
Okay, so you listen a lot.
Yes, I do. And I also learned that from a mentor. I think if you remember our previous mayor, Mayor McCallion, lots of times you'd be in meetings and she'd be silent. And then all of a sudden come out with, a great idea or a great rendition of something that should be done.
Yep.
And you learn from people like that. And I think business people, the same thing. I've learned from other business people who will sit in meetings and you think that they're not really participating. They are, because what they're doing is getting a package together to give you, and you're learning from that. And I've learned from some pretty good business leaders over the years that I've worked with.
I worked for Jim Pattison. You may know the name.
Yes, of course.
$9 billion billionaire.
Yes.
Which is pretty impressive. And he did the same thing. We had 6 people that reported to him. I was one of those 6. And when he was in strategic meetings, divisional meetings, board meetings, etc., he always spoke last. He would let everyone else around the table speak or ask questions first of all. And he said, why am I going to pay you all money if I'm not going to get the benefit of, what you're asking about or what you're thinking about or what you're saying?
Yeah.
And so that really taught me something about listening first. And it's the old line for 1 minute manager about first seek to understand before
Absolutely.
you then
I agree
seek
with
to
that.
be understood.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are the big successes that you think you've enjoyed during your time on council? What are your big achievements? What are the things?
The big achievements, I think, are working with the public and listening to them and finding out what they really want. Too often politicians are transferring what their thoughts are as to what residents or the voters want. I've always taken the position, listen to the people. And I've tried to be a grassroots listener, and sometimes, it's as simple as, can you get a bench for me? My father-in-law walks this walk every time, or through a park, and there's no bench for him to sit at the other end. And, you think that's a mundane thought, but it's important to that person, and it's important to the community.
Right.
And upgrading the parks. And to me, I've recognized the fact that we have a younger generation, real young, and then the curve is rising, as you know, Brian, many more seniors.
Yep.
And we're running out. You can see almost daily, we don't have enough space for our seniors to meet, our parks to accommodate their type of fitness. And, it's as simple sometimes as just pushing or doing something. You don't have to do, 30, lifts or 40 push-ups or whatever else. These folks need something different. And I've recognized that over the last probably 3 to 4 years.
Well, you may remember that I was chairman of the Mississauga City Summit.
Yes.
That Hazel
Yes.
Callion had asked me to do. And we had someone come in talk about seniors. And they said that the two most important things for seniors in a park were park benches on a fairly regular basis and a washroom.
Yes.
And that you had to have good, clean, available, accessible washrooms. And I don't think we have enough of those in Mississauga.
We don't, and I'm very proud to have probably the largest one in the city of Mississauga, Arundel Park. If you've ever been I know you visit, Arundel Park's got one of the finest washrooms. Other parks like Father Sad Park and 2 or 3 of the other, Fallingbrook, they're starting to get them one by one. It is important because, let's face it, we all have to
take a stop.
Take a stop, and especially if you're active and you're taking your water. And I think that's the other thing. People are into their hydration, and so let's face it, the nature works in a way that we have to get rid of that.
So one of the most beautiful parts of your ward, I think, is Riverwood.
Yes.
What have you done for Riverwood?
Riverwood, I've sat on that committee as a volunteer, even well before I've served as a volunteer for probably 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And I recognize the fact that knowing Hill Chapel from way back, when he had that property, and I know you knew Hill, I think you did, but Hill Chapel, of course, was a member of Parliament way back, and he owned that property, and he had always a vision for it. And when I was chairman of the Children's Festival, he invited us to have our meetings there, and I'd see the park. The park is a conservancy now, and a lot of people say it's not a park anymore, it's a conservancy, because that's what we're doing.
Yep.
We're the transition to a place where people can go and learn and walk and do different things. Right now, one of the biggest projects I'm working on and contributing the gas tax money that we were allocated is to restore the retention pond that's there. That's one of the oldest ponds. Yeah, there's a retention pond right in front of the house that is all grown in with trees. Yep. But the wildlife, the flora, the fauna there is unique to Peel. And over the years, of course, that's, just hasn't been kept up. And to me, that's a very important accomplishment. And I had to make my points with staff and the city people to say, this is important to retain something that's 10, 20, 30,000 years old. You just don't let a bog disappear, because the type of life there, anything from a snail to the deer there, is important. And that's what's important about Riverwood. That's what, we have 150 acres there, and people don't realize it. Yes, the Conservation Authority owns it, but the city manages it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that you and I have talked about previously, you may remember, is that if you actually take Riverwood and Arundel Park together, you've got, I think it's 800 or something like that acres. It's the size of Central Park in New York.
Right.
And you think about, that actually, I think you had to have the Pinchin Farms into that to get that number.
Yes.
and comparable to Central Park. And I was at a really interesting board meeting for Riverwood at one point in time, and a professor from UTM took me aside afterwards and said, Brian, you got it wrong. Because if you take what you just said, which is Riverwood, Arundel Conservation Area, Pinchin Farms, and add in the parkland at UTM, you actually get something approaching 1,000 acres, and it's comparable to Stanley Park in Vancouver. And the problem is that, that area doesn't have the kind of impact on our community that Stanley Park or Central Park would. And it could if we planned it right and did something right with it.
I think you hit it on the head. It's a plan, it's a vision. It's something that way back Charlie Brown, who started the Riverwood, and it was a different type of it was a garden club.
Yeah.
It was a garden club, and some of the old timers are still around. And
still love it. It was started by Charlie Brown.
Yeah. And they had a vision, a small vision, but look what it's expanded into. Now we have to make sure that we keep that park in the proper maintenance. We're losing every year, and this was you ask about things I'm proud of. Every year we're losing a little bit of the Credit River and the banks, and they're all washed out every year. Last year was terrible. finally, I sat down with staff and said, we've got to get the experts taking a look at it because the river's going to keep flowing. And if we want to make this into a world-class facility, then we've got to know and come up with the ideas how to prevent this flooding and this washing out of the river, because it's been doing it for 1,000 years. But we keep pouring gravel onto it and dirt onto it. River's coming down, and it's going to wash it out again.
Yeah.
So finally we were doing that. So that's one thing I'm very
That's good.
proud of. And hopefully, then we can get back to the walking path and the bike path and all the rest of it.
You and I previously have talked about transit and the
Yes.
importance of transit. Are we doing enough with transit?
Well,
Mississauga?
I think we're at a level where it's working, but it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of effort to convert people. Mississauga, Peel, and surrounds GTA. It's car country.
You say that, but I got to tell you, I commute from Clarkson or Port Credit or Arundel or Cooksville or sometimes even Dixie to downtown in the GO train station. It's packed.
Yes.
It's like unbelievably packed. And this past weekend, I was down for a concert, and it was packed on the weekends. People are saying it's down on Mondays and Fridays because of hybrid working. But in the middle of the week and on the weekends, it's packed. And one of the things that astounds me is that you take the express from Clarkson, you can't get a seat. You wait 5 minutes and take the local, you can get a seat. But people want fast, good transit.
Regular transit and more of it.
And that this, the line that goes through your ward is what, 6 trains in the morning, 6 trains in the evening?
Doesn't work.
Why? Why haven't we been able to achieve all-day two-way frequent GO train service?
I think that's the big puzzle, and why we haven't done that is that people still aren't used to walking a certain distance, even to the GO train station. That's come up out of a couple of studies, where we don't have even the proper busing or the transit from their home to the GO train. And we found that people in some cases won't walk the 300 or 500 meters.
Yep.
And how do we educate? We have to educate people. How do we do that?
Well, one of the things is you build development close to it.
Yes.
And we've turned down and some of the opposition to development at, there's a lot of opposition to the Clarkson GO train station development.
Dundas, same thing.
Yep.
All along the Dundas corridor, we're actually impeding that development. We're saying, well, just a minute, we're going to have a major nodes all the way along the Dundas or Lakeshore or eventually Burnenthorpe. But don't let them build high-rise there. Just a minute now. Don't you want those people living at places they can get onto the transit?
Well, I take a look. I was actually on a hill. Just behind my house, there's a big meadow that you might be aware of with a hill.
Yes.
And I was on the hill looking at downtown Mississauga this past weekend. And the Marilyn Monroe towers are now dwarfed.
Yes.
By M-City towers. They're huge. But the interesting thing is it's a good 2 major blocks west of here, Ontario. And originally the city thought the density would all be at the intersection of here, Ontario and Burnenthorpe. They've now allowed it to go a couple of major blocks to the west. Yet, I think in your official plan, at here, Ontario and Dundas, at Dixie and Dundas, at I can't remember what the other one is, all of the development is just at the intersection. You're not allowing it to grow a block beyond, which to have a really good district, you got to have more than just 4 towers on 4 corners. You got to have a community.
And Brian, you hit it on the head because we're finally starting to do that. We're starting to take a look at what the expansion plans are down the road. And the region, by the way, has taken carriage of that. Where do we want to expand? And it's along the corridors. And you're going to see, I predict within the next 5 to 10 years, some of the major plazas that we have, the commercial sites, they're gone. Because they're basically parking lots now.
Yeah.
And
well,
parking
you know
lots.
what? I met with some people at Oxford. They said the real reason why it was happening, you had development at plazas, at malls, was because councillors could actually more easily approve the developments because there weren't neighbors, because it was a parking lot. And if they had the same location, just as good, just as close to a whole bunch of other transit or amenities, but it had neighbors aside of it, it became far more difficult because of NIMBYism. Anyway, we're going to take a break for some messages and come back after just a couple minutes with Councillor Ron Starr, who's running for his 4th term in Ward 6, Mississauga. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. I'm interviewing tonight Ron Starr. He's a candidate for councillor in Ward 6. He's the current councillor. He's the incumbent. He's been there for 3 terms. He's up again. And Ron, I interviewed the deputy chief economist for CMHC. He said that the Greater Toronto Area needs 1.8 million extra homes than would otherwise be built in the next 10 years if we're going to have any level of affordability. You were just saying during the break that we need 200,000 of those in Mississauga alone. Well, how are we going to achieve that?
It's going to be
my kids can't afford to live in Mississauga anymore.
Yeah, and you're going to see another change too. We have to absorb 200,000 more people in Mississauga alone. We're built out basically at 750,000, 800,000 people. If you took a look at the official plans and everything we did, our transportation plans, our infrastructure, it was all designed for that 750,000 roughly.
Yep.
We've surpassed that now. And now, of course, I guess 2 governments ago, they said, okay, all the major cities are going to have to take more people because we're absorbing people every day.
Yep.
And I'm going to give you a stat for the region of Peel. We're absorbing 80 people a day, every day, between births and immigration. People have not, this has not stopped, and people are not realizing the impact. Tomorrow morning when we both wake up, there'll be 80 more people in the region of Peel.
Really? So let me ask you, I know it's not your ward, but we've got massive developments at Mississauga Road and Lakeshore, the Bright Spark area, and Lakeview at the old Lakeview Power Generating Station, with no new transit. Isn't that area going to be just a disaster for traffic?
If we don't do something about it, it's going to be a disaster.
It's going to be a disaster.
Absolutely.
I would hate to own a home on Mississauga Road or here, Ontario.
Yeah. I mean, you can't go south. You can't go by boat someplace.
Yeah.
You're going to be going by by either transit. We're doing the light rail, of course. That's happening right now.
But that's not going to solve those 2 developments because it's just going up here in Ontario.
No. You're going to have 20,000 people, 22,000 people in that one development alone.
At Lakeview.
At Lakeview.
And another 15 at Bright Spark.
And take a look at our agendas. Our agendas, every planning meeting, every second week that we meet, is another application. And don't forget that...
So another application that's near transit is fine by me. I think that makes sense. But I think you're going to have major problems with those 2 developments. I think they're beautiful developments. So it's not the developer's fault. It's government's fault, I think, that you allowed them to go ahead without any road increase. Like not even a road increase, let alone a transit increase. Like where are those people going to go? They're going to go up Mississauga Road or across Lakeshore to
Ontario, Dixie Road, whatever.
They're going to be a disaster.
Yeah. This is something that the planners or engineers especially are all working on. But if we don't solve that, or at least have a plan in place, it will be a disaster, because once those buildings start to get built, right now we're still at the concept stage. You can go down to their presentation center and see the great buildings. People are buying. They're buying like crazy, by the way, from what I understand.
Even in today's market, that's great.
That's right, today's market. But what's going to happen when they finally start to build those buildings one by one by one? The core area here, we have the capability of another 20 buildings minimum. The core. In, at Burnenthorpe and here in Ontario. People don't realize.
I can't believe you're going to have 20 more. It seems so built out today. That's incredible.
You have all the properties south of the 403, where you have the theaters, you have the restaurants, you have the old go-kart.
But that's happening without transit. Well, you're going to have the LRT. But, it should be happening at Dundas and here, Ontario, at Dixie and Dundas, at
all the major pods.
At the other GO train stations.
Yeah, I agree.
Ron, I got to ask you about this big controversy this past year. And so there was a public inquiry into, I guess, your behavior in regards to damage of Councillor Karen Rass's car. And I guess she resigned over it. She was a well thought of councillor, and so that was a big disappointment. What do you have to say about that? Is that something that you caused, and why?
Basically, this never happened with me, and it's something that I'm fighting vigorously. It was one individual that made a decision that we publicly, the lawyers have said, are based on not facts, but the probabilities. And frankly, when a person like myself who has integrity and there is no true proof except to say an individual made a decision.
This is the Integrity Commissioner.
Yes, the Integrity Commissioner. So we've had no choice, and that's why I can't say much about it. I wish I could, but we are proceeding to Superior Court.
So what you're
challenging him.
Challenging the Integrity
Yes,
Commissioner's
absolutely, absolutely.
So I understand
and we've had, by the way, we've had a forensic firm which is headed by the former police chief of Toronto, the former director or commissioner of the OPP, Julian Fantino, wrote a report, and it was public, and I can say this much about it: it absolved myself of anything.
Really?
Yes, it is public.
I understood that there was videotapes that showed you scratching her car.
Has anybody seen them?
I don't know. I have no idea.
That's a question.
Okay.
That's all I'll ask. That's all I ask you, and I ask everybody else that, because people have said, "Oh, those tapes." I said, "Who has seen them?" And that's the question. So that's why I can't say much about it. But I'm as my lawyers have said, we will vigorously defend this because I am not guilty, and we're going to go from there.
What do you think of Councillor Rass, former Councillor Rass?
I had never any difficulty with her at all. In fact, I was the one, when she was working at Hydro, that encouraged her to run.
Given what I know of your politics, frankly, I thought the two of you would have been comrades in arms.
Yeah, we never had a relationship, but we never had any problems at all. So that's, the whole thing. There's a lot of facts that can't be brought forward at this point in the public forum, but they will be brought forward because there will be, as I think, probably subpoenas and all the rest of that. But, I'm prepared to go the whole distance, and I'm doing it for one reason, and that's I'm not going to leave a legacy of something that I didn't do for my kids and grandkids, and I'm prepared to defend whatever I have to do.
Well, good luck in that regard.
Yeah, thank you.
If you're not guilty, good luck. If you are guilty, what do you think should happen to you?
Well, I'm not looking for that. That's not an answer for me.
Right.
So I haven't even thought about that. So.
Well, it's interesting because you and I met, as you may remember, on the Hazel McCallion public inquiry.
Yes.
And we both got very involved in a group of people that were working to exonerate her and to support her during one of the most difficult times in her career. And I think in the end people generally believe that she never did anything criminally wrong and or anything that was civilly wrong, but that she probably wasn't completely right in some of the actions that she took, given that her son was involved in the hotel development. But that was a pretty tough time for her.
Oh yeah, I agree. I was there for her all the way along. I mean, there was enough, I guess, discrepancies and evidence to say this person, and especially you've got to also place another quality item or factor in there. Look at where these charges were coming from, and look what Hazel did for the city. So you add all those up, Brian, and I think there's got to be some way that we take a look at these with some favor. And frankly, I think she got the right decision, and I think a lot of us were disappointed that she didn't run again.
Right. Last question. I got to ask you. You may or may not have an opinion on it, but I was really shocked that you guys all voted to make the regional chair a part-time position, and someone on council can take that position and not have to resign their position on council, which has always been the fact in the past. And so, it's almost as if Premier Ford a couple of years ago wanted to make the regional chair elected a more powerful, more important position, and you're doing the complete opposite for what Ford thought was the right thing to do. And I can't believe the situation where you or someone else could be a chair, sit on local council, so you'd have the regional chair and the mayor. You'd almost have like two mayors on one city council, wouldn't you? Like, how can this possibly make sense? Or work?
I guess the biggest factor that came out was the expense of the office and the type of role the chair actually plays. The chair is I guess a person who runs the meetings. They really don't have a lot of decision making power, and
they have a vote, right? They have one vote.
Yeah, they have one vote, but very, very seldom ever used. Very seldom used. And because you have a council of 24, and usually those votes are not, I think I've seen 1 or 2 tie votes in 10 to 12 years. And it got to the point where a lot of people thought, well, just a minute now, maybe it can be done, and maybe it needed more research. But, yes, I was one of those that said, let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at it. Because as an engineer, you try to take a look at all the facts, and then analyze them, throw them up, and are there gray areas, black areas, areas that we've got a concern, and yeah, a lot of us voted that way to take a look at it.
See, I would have gone with the elected. I would have made it stronger, because I do think that the regions are becoming more important and should become more important, as so many issues that we're dealing with are of a regional nature. If not, frankly, at some point in time, you may know that I think it was not Ann Johnston, it was another Ann from U of T, that Ann Golden, who did a big study back in 1996 about the GTA, and she said that Brampton and Mississauga should merge, Oakville, Burlington, Milton should merge, Oshawa, Ajax, Whitby should merge, and almost all of York should merge. And the smaller ones like Halton Hills and Caledon should join the regions north of them. And then you would have 4 cities with 4 mayors, along with the City of Toronto, that should combine to have a new GTA council like the old Metro Council. And her argument was, if you've got the Mayor of Toronto and 29 mayors of smaller things, you'll listen to the Premier and the Mayor. And I thought it made a ton of sense. And Hazel McCallion, actually, I did a show with her, she said that was the most brilliant thing that could ever happen, but politically it would be suicide for whoever recommended it.
And that's what happened. I sat on the review committee, by the way, for the Ann Golden report.
Oh, really?
People forget that. And we toured the province asking the same questions. And that the government of the day did exactly what Hazel predicted. They said, well, we'll just leave it the way it is.
Well, no, what they did is they amalgamated Toronto,
yeah.
but nothing else. Anyway, Ron Starr, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure being here with you anytime.
It was interesting to chat with you. Good to chat with you. Good to see you again. And I wish we could chat a little bit more about this issue, but I understand it's in front of the courts, and so we'll see what comes out on that. Good luck in that regard, and good luck on the 24th.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
That's our show for tonight. I'm Brian Crombie. This is Councillor Ron Starr, running in Ward 6 on October 24th to be your councillor for the 4th time. I wanted Ron in because this issue has become a big issue, and I wanted to ask him the question, and he answered it how he felt was appropriate to answer it. And I think that it's important in good times and in bad, because I've gone through some good times and I've gone through some bad times. It's important that you have an opportunity to state your piece. And I think Ron Starr deserved an opportunity to state his piece, and he did today. And he's someone who has contributed to Mississauga community over the years, and so that needs to be recognized as well. And I don't know, I've heard people on both sides of this issue, so it'll be interesting to see how it all comes out. Anyway, that's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everybody.